And we're back to concept 1.3, multiply and divide signed numbers. In mathematics, the distributive property of binary operations generalizes the distributive law, which asserts that the equality is always true in elementary algebra. So, in the example 2 parentheses 4 plus 3 would equal 2 times 4 plus 2 times 3, which would equal 14. The 2 outside the brackets or parentheses is multiplied onto everything that is inside the brackets or parentheses. We can further understand this with these explanations. A times B equals B times A plus B equals B plus A, parentheses A times B times C equals A parentheses B times C, and parentheses A plus B plus C equals A plus parentheses B plus C. Finally, A parentheses B plus C equals A times B plus A times C. So now, use the distributive property to show the expanded form of the expression negative 4 times parentheses negative 5 plus 3. And we remember we have to multiply the outside number times every number inside the parentheses. So we first do negative 4 times negative 5 in a parentheses, plus we do another parentheses, negative 4 times 3. We now simplify negative 4 times negative 5. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that would be 20, plus negative 4 times 3, which would be a negative number. Plus a negative number is just minus, so 20 minus 12. Next, which number line models the expression 2 times parentheses negative 4? So we draw a number line. And from 0, we can represent 2 times negative 4 by moving to the left one time, that's 0 to negative 4, and then another time from negative 4 to negative 8. Select the pair of multiplication and division problems that have the same value. So first we have one column and then the next column. We can simply do the division problem. 64 divided by 4 equals positive 16. Negative 75 divided by 5 equals negative 15 because we have a negative on the sum of 5. Next, we do 48 divided by 12, two positive numbers, makes 4. Negative 36 divided by 3, there's a negative number, so the result would be a negative 12. Next, we do the same for the next column. 4 times parentheses negative 4, there's a negative number, so that's negative 16. Parentheses negative 5 times 3, there's also a negative number, so it would be negative 15. Negative 2 times 2, there's a negative number, so the result would be negative 4. And negative 4 times negative 3, there are two negative numbers. When we multiply two negative numbers, it becomes positive. So negative 4 times negative 3 equals positive 12. Now, we try to see which one is the same value. And the only one that we have as the same value is negative 75 divided by 5, which equals negative 15, and parentheses negative 5 times 3, which also equals negative 15. What is the value of the expression parentheses 6 times 9 divided by negative 3? The way we do that is we do the parentheses first. 6 times 9 equals 54. Now we can easily remove that parentheses. 54 divided by negative 3 is negative 18. Remembering that if there's a negative number, the answer will also be negative. Which of the following values are equivalent to 12 times parentheses negative 7? So 12 times parentheses negative 7 would also mean the product of 7 times parentheses negative 12. And all we're doing there is moving that negative from the number 7 to the 12. And also the product of negative 7 times 12. All we're doing there is removing the parentheses. And in this case, the parentheses doesn't do much, so -7 stays -7, and we're just changing it to the first side, -7 times 12, which is also the same value. Suppose that A, B, and C are positive numbers. The following statements are true. So, if B is greater than C, then -A times parentheses B minus C is negative. If C is greater than B, then -A parentheses B minus C is positive. So how do we know this? So we take B is greater than C. That will mean that the positive number is the greater number inside the parentheses. So we subtract a smaller negative number, it's going to be positive. So negative times a positive number will equal a negative number. Now we go to the next example. If -A is multiplied by a smaller positive number minus a bigger negative number, that result would be a negative times a negative. And as we said before, a negative times a negative would equal a positive number. So when B is greater than C, that would result in a positive number. When C is greater than B, that would result in a negative number. After we do that, we can then conclude that a negative times a positive equals a negative number, and a negative times a negative equals a positive number. Dylan is playing with a seesaw on the playground. He puts a piece of tape at specific distances from the center of the seesaw so that the ratio of the distance between the center and the tape and the distance between the center and the right end is always a common fraction. Dylan then records the relationship between the height of the tape and the height of the left end of the seesaw relative to the neutral position. Use the pattern you observe in the table below to correctly complete Dylan's conjectures. So we look at the graph below, and we can conclude from that, if the tape is placed at 1/3 of the distance between the center and right end, when the left end is at the height of 18 inches relative to a neutral position, the tape will be at a height of blank inches relative to a neutral position. So we look at the graph first. We look at the first row, and the first column says distance from the center to tape divided by distance from center to right end. So that's 1/2. The next column says height of tape, inches. That's -1. And the last column says height of left end, inches. And that would be 2. How do we relate -1 and 2? So we can simply multiply by -2. -1 times a -2 becomes a +2. We do this for the next row as well. 2 times -2 equals -4. A positive number times a negative number equals a negative number. Now we look into the next row, but this time it changes. This time -2 times -3 equals 6. So that's a negative number times a negative number is a positive number. And we can also conclude that the last one is also -3. 1.5 times -3 equals -4.5. So to figure out in our question what the blank would be, the height of blank inches, we represent it by trying to figure out the height times -3, because we know the tape is placed at 1/3 of the distance between the center and right end. So h times -3 equals 18, which we are also told the height of 18 inches. Another way to find the answer is by making 18 divided by -3. A positive number divided by a negative number will give us a negative value. So 18 divided by 3 is 6, and we know it's a negative, so that would be -6. Now, if the tape is placed at 1/4 of the distance between the center and right end of the seesaw, then the height of the left end will be blank times the height of the tape relative to a neutral position. So we have to figure out, why are we multiplying by -2 in the first 2 rows and -3 in the last 2 rows? Well, we can find that the negative reciprocal of 1/4 is -4. all we're doing in the first two rows is flipping 1/2 upside down. So it would be 2 over 1. 2 divided by 1, which is simply 2. Now we'd make that negative, and that is -2. For the last two rows, 1/3 flipped upside down would be 3 over 1, or 3 divided by 1, which is 3, and we make that negative, -3. So if we're looking at 1/4, the distance between the center and the right, we flick 1/4 upside down, which would be 4 over 1. That would equal 4, and we make that negative. And the result would be -4. If two similar substances of different temperature are mixed, the temperature of the resulting mixture can be found by multiplying the mass of each substance by its original temperature, adding the result, then dividing by the total mass of the mixture, or the following equation. Suppose that 200 grams of ice at -10 degrees Celsius is dropped into 1,000 grams of hot water at 95 degrees Celsius. What is the temperature of the resulting mixture? All we have to do is plug in all these numbers to the original equation. So the first mass would be 200 grams. The first temperature would be -10 degrees Celsius, plus the second mass, which is 1,000 grams, times the second temperature, which is 90 degrees Celsius. We then do a division of the first mass plus mass number 2, which is 200 grams plus 1,000 grams. We can then just continue simplifying. So 200 times -10 equals -2,000, plus parentheses 1,000 times 95, that would equal 95,000. And in the bottom, 200 plus 1,000 is 1,200. -2,000 plus 95,000 can now be simplified into 93,000. Another way of seeing that is 95,000 minus 2,000. That is also 93,000 divided by 1,200. Finally, if we do that division, we can conclude that that would equal 77.5 degrees Celsius. So what is the temperature of the resulting mixture? 77.5 degrees Celsius. Place each of the following expressions into the proper category. So our categories are positive value or negative value. And our expressions are parentheses -3 with an exponent of 100, parentheses -2 with an exponent of 17, and parentheses 3 minus 4 times parentheses 4 minus 5. And the last one is parentheses -1 times parentheses -3 times parentheses -5. If we simply do this with a calculator, we find that -3 to a exponent of 100 is a positive number, and parentheses 3 minus 4 times parentheses 4 minus 5 is also a positive number. And finally, the last two are negative numbers. We can simply put those in the proper category and finish this example. But there's a little bit more to it. If we look at it, we can see that the exponents give us a clue of how to make this easier. So we look at the positive value, -3, to an exponent of 100. This exponent is an even number. So we remember that if we do a negative times a negative, which is also two numbers, and it's an even number, that will always be positive. Negative times a negative is positive. So if the exponent is even, then the value will be positive. Now if we look at the negative value, -2 with an exponent of 17, 17 is an odd number. So in this case, an odd number will always give you a negative value. We can continue with the bottom two examples. So 3 minus 4, 4 is a bigger number. So 3 minus 4 is -1. And 4 minus 5, 5 is a bigger number. So 4 minus 5 is -1. -1 times -1, a negative times a negative, will also be positive. And we look at the right. -1 times -3, that's a positive number. But then we do that positive number times a negative number, and that will give us a negative value. Again, if we counted 3, that is a odd exponent. or an odd number. So an odd number will give us a negative value. Match each expression in the first column to an expression of equivalent value in the second column. So we have negative 3 parentheses 6 minus 3, negative 9 parentheses 1 minus parentheses negative 2, 3 times parentheses 2 minus 7, negative 2 parentheses negative 5 plus 1. In the next column, we have negative 3 parentheses 3 minus parentheses negative 6, negative 4 parentheses 3 plus parentheses negative 5, negative 5 parentheses 2 plus 1, negative 1 parentheses 2 minus parentheses negative 7. So we can just simply simplify from this forward. Negative 3 parentheses negative 6, negative 3 parentheses 6 minus 3. We can simplify 6 minus 3, that's 3. Negative 3 times 3 is a negative 9. We continue. 1 minus negative 2, minus and minus becomes plus. So negative 9, 1 plus 2 becomes negative 9 times 3, and that would be negative 27. We do the parentheses again. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. We go on. Negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 4, a negative times a negative is positive, so this becomes positive 8. And to give us a little bit of room, we move those answers to the left, and we continue with our simplification of the expressions. So again, we go 3 minus minus 6. That minus and minus becomes plus, so it's negative 3 times parentheses 3 plus 6. That becomes negative 3 times 9, and negative 27 would be the answer. Next, we do 3 plus parentheses negative 5. That just becomes 3 minus 5. And negative 4 times negative 2, which is a negative times a negative, becomes a positive 8. We do 2 plus 1 in the parentheses in the next example, which is 3. Negative 5 times 3 equals negative 15. And again, we simplify the parentheses first, and it's 2 minus minus 7. Minus minus 7 becomes positive 7, so 2 plus 7 equals 9, and negative 1 times 9 equals negative 9. Now we can actually match each expression, which the one that matches. So the first one matches with the last one. The next matches with the first one. Negative 15 matches straight on to negative 15. And finally, the only positive numbers, 8 and 8, match. And this concludes our concept 1.3, multiply and divide signed numbers. Bye-bye. Self-destruct in 10.
Please push the red button. Yeah, that red button. Just push it. Yeah, the red button. Push the red button. Okay, come on. The red button. Push it. You're gonna let it self-destruct? If you subscribe, you're forgiven for trying to destroy the world.